Continuation. In the same way, Scripture itself gives us mixed messages. It is an honor. Come into his courts with thanksgiving. That's part of Scripture. But we've given up on the idea that you have to appease God or bring an offering in order to be accepted to God. This is fresh in my mind, of course, because the scripture for this week was about Jesus chasing the money changers out of the temple. We don't do that. We don't collect something at the door before you can walk in. So in Scripture, we have this idea that God is worth more than anything, that we want to come before God with praises. Bring him your firstborn, your best produce, the greatest and best that you have to offer. That we want to give God our whole selves, our souls, our hearts, our minds, our bodies, and what's in our pocketbook. And at the same time, we have the other scriptures that talk about, I am the God who doesn't want your burnt offerings. What I want is a contrite heart. What I want is you to care for the poor. Jesus looked at the woman who was pouring expensive perfume over his feet, and his disciples said, hey, wait a moment. Why are you letting her waste this perfume? The money that she spent on it could have fed the poor for years. And Jesus said, but what she is doing is wonderful. Giving gifts to God is wonderful. And at the same time, Jesus commanded, love one another as I have loved you. Take this out. Give this love away. Don't just give it to God, to Jesus. Take it out. So some churches have gone in the direction of saying, having expensive things in church, having beautiful things, that is a waste of money. We've seen this in some of the emerging churches recently, where some of them have broken away from the traditional church. They do away with the overhead and the space and the trappings of beauty, and they worship on the streets. We see others that say it is the beauty that draws us to God, that reminds us of how great God is, and that gives us the strength to go out and serve. This week, we don't have a video, but I do have a website that I want you to visit. It's about worship with the homeless and an art program for the homeless to bring them beauty. Today, as we look at God as the giver, the one who receives our gifts, and the one who calls us to give beyond the church, look at art. Look at what you give of yourself. And I'll end with one personal story. For many years, I led our children's chapel program. And one day I went in at the beginning of the Sunday worship period to check that chapel was ready. Lying on the altar, I found a napkin, and scribbled on it with crayon was a message. Dear God, you know I don't get to come to church very often, but I still love you. And the name of the child. This was from one of the children who accompanied his grandmother as she was setting up because she was part of Altar Guild. His mother does not approve of church and would rarely let the kids come. If I could have, I would have framed that and placed it in a position of honor in the church, because that message of giving, self-giving of our whole selves, that's great art.